I guess this is from a lady, and she says, every date I've had this month has attempted to choke me when we make out, and I'm tired of it. What the absolute F is going on with men this year? The last date I went on, I explicitly said no hickeys. Guess what? Hickeys. I'm just tired, dudes. Stop telling me how much your girlfriend loves to be choked. This is not the same. I don't care. Okay, so that's the question. And I don't really understand this question. I don't really understand, like, why does a guy think that it's sexy to choke a woman? I mean, in general. I don't know.
I can tell you. So there's two things going on here. First of all, I got confused in the middle when she says no hickeys. Because hickeys and choking are two different things, right? Hickey is when you suck on someone, it leaves that little bruise, right? Like you leave a mark.
Yeah, I think that's right. You know, I had to look up a hickey because it's been forever since I've heard that word. I think what she's saying is, guys, I have these rules, you know, and she says no hickeys, and then they give her hickey anyway, so that means they're not listening to her rules. And I think this is a normal thing. I think, you know, women have their like boundaries and men have their boundaries, but in this, I think women's boundaries sort of, in a way, count for more. And she's just saying men aren't respecting her boundaries sexually, I would say. That's what I was reading this.
Got it. So for me, hickey is more innocent than choking. Like they're not parallel. The reason hickey's annoying is the next day someone sees it at school and they know you did something naughty. And it's kind of like a wolf peeing on a tree. It's the way people mark their partners to say, hey, this person's this person's got something going on, don't touch. I think there's that element to it. Now, the choke thing, I'll tell you my experience, is that it's come up a couple of times during my single days. One girl was like, I was hooking up with her, and she was like, I want you to choke me. And I go, what do you mean? And she goes, well, take off your belt, put it around my neck. And I said, I'm not doing that. I don't have a sophisticated enough knowledge to know the difference. I can't tell the difference between fun choking and murdering because I've never done either. So to me, it requires, I guess, an amount of finesse, right? Because you always hear about those people that like are doing it to themselves and accidentally go too far during the pleasure. I don't want to do that. And my feeling is always, let's just say you see me on the elevator with a woman and she's got a giant circular bruise around your neck. Your first thought is not, wow, they're a wild couple. Your first thought is this guy's a monster. So I'm as much as I like to be a little bit wild, there's certain things I'm very gun shy on. So I was on the other end of it and I just wouldn't do it. Now another girl was like, do it with your hands. And the lightest touch you could imagine. I was like, okay. I was like, this is basically a hug. I was like, I'll give you a neck hug, but I'm not like actually cutting off the air or squeezing any of that stuff, right? And I guess it was good enough. She liked it, but I was like, I don't want to do this again. So I got pressured into it one time because it was like, at least I don't have to use a utensil. But what she's talking about is making out and someone's doing choking. That sounds insane to me. And maybe I'm just an old prude, but I feel like there are people who like violent intimacy, but I think it's usually connected to there's something wrong with you. I don't think it's healthy to have overly aggressive, to mix bedroom fun and fighting, and to mix making out and fighting. I think the real problem is with her. She's obviously has a type, right? Because she's picking guys that do this. And this is something you have to watch out for yourself. If one time is an aberration, 2 times is a coincidence, 3 times is enemy action. And that's what's happening here. If she's having every guy she dates tries to choke her, there's clearly something wrong with her picker. She's picking, because that type of guy is not that common. I know now how common certain fetishes are, and the choking one is not that common. So to get 3 in a row means there's something going on. Probably there's some, unhealthy history, or they learn it from a previous girlfriend. That's usually where you learn it. I think usually a guy learns it from a girl, then thinks every girl likes that. Like the first girl you kiss, that's how you learn how to kiss as a guy. So I don't know if that's what's happening. That's why they're saying, oh, my last girlfriend liked it, so she taught me how to do it, so now it's a habit. I get that. But you have to learn, for men, there's 2 things you have to learn. First of all, you have to learn what's on menu and off menu. There are certain things that are just standard that come with the package of when you're making out or when you're doing bedroom time. And there are certain things you have to ask about, right? You have to find out, Is this okay or not okay? Are you doing these things, right? And this falls into that second category because it's not a standard thing. It's not on the regular menu. And I think it's very important because, listen, this falls into that fault to me. That falls into the realm of assault. It's not like it's a crime to choke someone without their explicit. I think even permissions up. I think they have to ask you to do it, and then you can decide. But even then, I just don't like it. It's not, to me. It's not romantic at all. But you know, everyone likes different stuff. But to me, it's very important to have very clear boundaries. If there's no discussion of a safe word with something like this, you have a huge problem. You have a huge safety issue. And I could totally understand her, especially if you say don't choke me and then someone chokes you, she can call the cops. Like that, to me, that's how that goes, right? Like that's very bad. So there's two things going on. The guys are definitely in the wrong for what they're doing, but it's also very suspicious that she keeps picking guys that are doing this. I know there are certain weird trends with younger men because I remember I knew a girl in her 20s. She was like, I just slept with a guy last night and he kissed me while we were having sex. And I said, what? Doesn't everyone do that? She's like, I've never experienced that before. So I know there's a loss of intimacy with younger generations from watching too much pornography. And maybe, I don't know if there's a lot of choking, and maybe there probably is, right? Maybe that's where it comes from as well, but it comes from pornography, but it's just bad. You want to have trust in the bedroom. It's so important. If you don't trust each other, then, and it's so easy to, trust is so fragile. By doing something weird or something off menu or something other person's permission, you break that trust. You're never going to get it back. So the guys are definitely more in the wrong, which she needs to pay attention to what type of guys she's choosing. If you're choosing to date like motorcycle guys and bad boys and that kind of thing, okay, maybe there's a pattern, or maybe it's just she's choosing. I remember I went through a series of girlfriends, like 6 girlfriends in a row, were all victims of childhood abuse, and I was like, what is going on with me that this is what I'm magnetized to?
Wow.
I had to try and figure it out. One of my other friends dated 7 girls in a row that all have the same name, and I was like, and it was his sister's name. I was like, what's happening here? And he finally broke the pattern by dating someone else with his other sister's name. So you have to look at yourself whenever you have a series of relationships in a row that all have the same thing happen. So, and you could look at it like this. I knew someone once, he's like, all my business partners steal from me. I was like, how many business partners is it? He goes, 7 in a row. And I was like, yeah, maybe it's you. 7 is a lot, right? 7 is, people sometimes cannot look at themselves and go, maybe there's something that I'm doing that's wrong. And in this case, it's her method of picking. And this is where women have a lot of control. They can choose which type of men they bring into their lives, and a lot of women do want the bad boy. They can't separate the confidence from the negativeness, and that's where you get a bad boy. So it's unfortunate, but I kind of feel like those are the two things that are happening. As far as getting someone to stop, if someone doesn't stop when you say don't choke me, like, you got to get out of there. Like, that's not who you should be with. I wouldn't. If my wife was doing that to me, I would also not be with her. Like, as a man or a woman, you don't, like, people should always stop when you say, please don't choke me. Like, that should be an easy stop. So, yeah, massive red flags. Get out of those relationships. Maybe don't date someone for a month and look back. And I know she says, I saw in the note, she said, I don't go on a lot of dates. But still, there's something in your picking process that you need to watch out. I mean, don't you think that if you keep having the same thing happen with disparate people, there's something going on with your own pattern?
I think there's women that attract certain type of men, absolutely, in their behavior, how they look. Just like there's a way that you walk, down the street at night when you're by yourself. You walk, like as a man, you walk in the middle. You walk with a bit of a swagger, with confidence, because that's the kind of walk that tells people, hey, I don't put up with anything, And some women are the opposite of that. They look like sort of victims. They look like, I don't know, and they attract guys like this. I think you're absolutely correct. There's also something now that has happened over the past with the ubiquity of porn and the internet is it's gotten more extreme. And the things that are like normal stuff with people are not interesting anymore to people because they've seen it already and they've seen it so many times and, their brains aren't turned on by that anymore. So now they're into more extreme stuff and more extreme stuff and more extreme stuff.
It turns out there is one scent that a woman just can't get enough of on a man. One scent.
If I smelled this on him, I would jump on him for sure.
I couldn't keep my hands off of him the whole night.
So what would you do if your boyfriend was wearing this cologne?
We'd have to go. I'd have to go meet him right now.
Scientists have found that the one scent works through the terminal nerve and may create a strong romantic response in women.
It's a sexy smell.
So I was just walking past this guy and OMG, I smelled the best thing ever.
You can't buy this one scent in any department store, and you can't find this one scent anywhere else. But I'm going to send you a full trial bottle of the one scent so you can try it out for yourself and see how much abundance you're getting in your life. One guy is using the one scent when doing his errands, like going to the grocery store, and now he's chatting up women and going home with more than just his groceries, if you know what I mean. John's wearing this one scent at work, and now the two cute young interns who have never noticed him before are both asking him out, all in the same week. Another guy is getting attractive younger women stopping him on the street, with one girl leaning in and inhaling his scent. He's already had multiple encounters with beautiful women. Mike tells me he's using this one scent when doing the deed. He says that women love it so much that one woman is keeping his shirt to smell during the day when she's away from him. These guys are just starting their incredible life of abundance, and I know you can too by using this one scent.
So this is just like the next step. And obviously, the fact that it would occur to all these men to choke a girl when they're making out has to mean that they saw this somewhere on the internet and they saw it a number of times. And something told them that, oh, women are turned on by this. So I always tell people, I always say, you know, you're going to be really way better off if you avoid porn completely and make a break with porn and stop using porn completely, because it's just all sorts of bad news, especially, you know, for relationships. It's so harmful and so damaging. And this is just an example, I think, of the damage that comes out of porn. It never would have occurred to me in a million years, a question like this 20 or 30 years ago. Never. So
for me, there's a huge firewall between fantasy and reality. And something I see in a movie, I don't want to actually do in real life. And I've like, even if I see it in a pornography, I'm like, I don't want to actually do that, right? And anything I've seen in my whole life, I've never been. So to me, it's always like, oh, I'll watch something more extreme in a movie, just like I'll watch an action movie. But I realize is that maybe I'm the exception. Maybe it's because I'm older and I kind of didn't encounter. When I was in high school, pornography was you found a magazine in the back of a closet at school, right? That a lot of other people had found. So that's my first encounter when I was like 17. So it wasn't the way it is now with the internet and the ubiquitous and high speed internet and everything straight to videos and all of that stuff. So it's very different. Maybe that's why I didn't get so reprogrammed. But yeah, I feel like a lot of people are breaking that barrier between this is something I saw in a movie, this is something I should do in real life. And it's very strange to me. But I mean, the evidence bears out that I'm the exception because, you know, people are changing what they think is normal. And a lot of people are doing acts that like I don't have any interest in. Like I was really uncomfortable when women have brought the thing up with me about it. I'm like,
there's that expression, the Overton window.
Yeah, it shifted in a direction I do not like. And I actually see this. Here's
it's expanded into what's acceptable and what's okay.
I think this gives older men a bigger advantage because it's like, oh, at least when I'm with an older guy, he doesn't want to do all this weird stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, at least I don't have to do anything that like I have to limber up before we go to the bedroom. I don't have to worry about like bruise on my neck or stuff. Because I dated a girl that was into vampire stuff once, and she had a very specific vampire fan and she liked to do a lot of biting stuff. And again, I was like, we had a very long conversation about it because like, I was like, listen, there's biting and then there's biting. I was like, are you talking about blood? She was like, no. And I was like, you talk about you bite and the mark is there tomorrow. And she was like, no. I was like, okay, fine. Like, I'll let you try it. Because I'm like, if it's going to hurt, right? But it's like, and that was an exception. Hers was very specific about a garden, wearing a flowery white shirt, like, like that type of gothic vampire. But it was, you have to, whenever you're talking about fetish stuff, you have to be very specific, because if someone's into something that you're not into, you want to find out as early as possible and just get out of there. So that one was the only time I wasn't uncomfortable with someone's thing, because it was like, it was like a vampire without sharp teeth. I was like, oh, okay, fine, let's try it. And we tried it once. I was like, all right, if that's what you love, like, it's fine by me, because it's not too extreme. It doesn't leave a mark. It doesn't really hurt. It's a little bit, right? But yeah, this Overton window shift of like everyone's doing butt stuff, everyone's spitting in each other's faces, everyone's slapping each other and choking. All that stuff is horrible to me. So it's not romantic. And I think that's the thing, is that romance seems to have disappeared. So yeah, that's a rough one. I've got one for you. Let's roll into the next one, because like that one is making me feel down. This one's a crazy one. I'm a 21-year-old man, and my 20-year-old ex-girlfriend and her 19-year-old boyfriend have asked me to be a sperm donor. Like, so young. What do you think about that? Because that's a pretty heavy question.
Well, why is it heavy? I mean, if I'm asked to be a sperm donor, I don't really have to do too much, right? I just have to jerk off into a little jar or something, I assume, and that's all I have to do. I mean, not a whole lot. It's not like carrying someone's baby, A surrogate has to carry a baby to term. That's a commitment. I think it's weird that she doesn't want the boyfriend. Why isn't the boyfriend? I don't understand the reason for it. Is there any context here?
Yeah, I mean, they can't. There's an issue where the normal boyfriend can't do it. But let me put it this way, okay? Let's think about it from this perspective. Let's say you and your wife want to have a child. You're young. You want to have a child, and you go, hey, and you, for some reason, your sperm don't work. And you go, you know what? Let's get your ex-boyfriend to impregnate you. Is that my first thought? Like, let's get your ex.
It wouldn't really matter. I mean, I would think that you would go to a system of determining who's most fit, the man that's smartest and best physical fitness and best, best parents and grandparents. I would think you would go through a selection process that would be more intellectual, more rigorous than just, maybe the ex-boyfriend had super fitness though, maybe genetically and he's intellectually and physically, and his parent, maybe it was just great,
But don't you see how there's a couple of here?
You don't really know much when you're 21 or 20 anyway. You don't know anything when you're
so
that age.
Young. That to me, as looking for a sperm donor at 19, 20 seems very young to do it. They're not married, right? They're boyfriend, girlfriend. They're jumping into this thing, and it's a huge deal. And it's the laws around it are very complicated. When you do it directly, like there's a lot of stuff where suddenly this guy could be in a child support situation with his ex-girlfriend. And there's a lot of competition elements, right? Like I don't want to meet my wife's ex-boyfriend. She doesn't want to meet my ex-girlfriend. So that adds a layer of complexity to it, right? So they're very young. It's a very strange ask because it's his direct competition. Like the person you're most in competition.
She should wait about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and there's this whole thing where they're like a group of friends that are all hanging out together, and it's like, I know the reason. Here's what I think. I think the reason they went to this guy is cost. Because like if you go to a sperm bank, it's got to be expensive. I don't know. Like in vitro, I know in vitro is expensive. They're not. I also think if cost is an issue, they're not talking about modern medicine. They're talking about the old-fashioned way. So that right? Because if you're talking about saving money,
you could do it at home. You just need a turkey baster and a Kleenex.
Is that really?
I mean, you don't need a whole lot.
Is that actually true?
Really?
So
I don't think it's that complicated, honestly.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's not complicated.
How much time between when I finish and when you have to deliver the product? How much time do you have?
I would think that it should be pretty much right away, but sperm does live in a woman's vagina for about 4 days, 5 days. So it's
How long can it live in the base
lives a long time
That's
at the
why I
right
don't know.
temperature,
I really
and the right
don't
setting.
know.
But yeah,
To me, that's so crazy because
the guy makes his deposit. You know, he goes in the bathroom, makes a deposit. Yeah, I know it's crazy, but it would be, and that's what people do. It. I mean, it's not that complicated. They don't really need to go into the all. And so if it's a matter of expense, I would question why 19 and 21-year-olds so badly want to have a child right now, because you don't know anything when you're 21 or 20 or 19. You don't know anything. Your brain doesn't even fully develop till you're like 25. I think it's a terrible mistake having children at that age without having a solid foundation of, like you said, at least marriage, a relationship, knowing someone for a long time. Very, very few of those work out. And then you have a child that grows up without a father. You have all kinds of problems. This woman probably doesn't have a good way to make a living, so it's going to burden her parents. She may not have solid parental relationship. It may be a burden to her grandparents. I mean, just all kinds of things. So I think it's a big mistake. That's my thought.
Let me ask you a question, a follow-up. Think back to who you were dating at 18 or 19. What if you guys had done like a sperm donor baby together? Like when I think about who I was dating at 18, like my life would be so devastated if I was stuck with that person, right? With that tie, and we had a kid that was like late in their 20s now, I guess. Like who we end up with is so different than who we think we like when we're in high school and college. Very few people, right, stay with a person from when they're 18.
It's also the fact that we all make our passage in life. So my girlfriend at the time was this beautiful Israeli girl, and then she went off to Israel and served in the military. So how would that have worked if we had children?
You would have taken care of the kid.
I don't know. It would be awful. I can't imagine. I would have been the baby, stay-at-home dad, which wasn't me. And everybody has a passage they make through life, has a journey where they reach a certain point. Now, when you're ready to have children, generally, men don't feel ready ever to have children, in my opinion. But when you're really ready, it's like financially you're doing okay, you have a career, you have that sort of thing covered, you're moving up in the world. Maybe the woman has a career also, probably, but she can take more time now to stay home. Hopefully she has something where they're a bit flexible with her work. And when you're 20, you don't have that, or 21, you don't have any of that. So you don't have the financial foundation for it, and you certainly don't have the maturity for it. You don't know where you're going in life, so it's just another terrible mistake. You know what I would say, Jonathan? It's a bit like, you know how people would marry their high school sweethearts sometimes? And how often did that work out? Like, never? It's the same thing. You don't really know what you're going to be like when you're 25. When you're 18 or 19, you're a different person than when you're 25. It's just so many changes, and that's what happens. People get married, and then they find out, oh, what a big mistake this was. So let me ask you a question here. We can just chat about another question. This is an interesting question, I think. This is kind of a thing like, this is like a couple started out as friends, and they split everything. They split the bill for the restaurant. They split the gas for the car, right? Then they're dating, and the relationship changes to a romantic one. How long do you want to live? How long does any of us have to live? I spent 25 years figuring out a way that we can live decades longer than otherwise. I traveled the world, interviewed scientists, interviewed old people. There are people 100, 110, or 120 living happy, fulfilling lives, having romance in their life, having a wonderful life, doing active things. You're not hearing about those people. So why would you limit yourself? Why would you limit yourself to 70 or 80 years and being sick and ending up in a nursing home and all the dementia and all the issues that we all have? Why limit yourself? I personally believe that I am going to live to 120. And that's why I wrote the book, Healthy to 120. Based on my 25 years of research, I found one single thing that I think makes all the difference. Now, there's lots of other things that matter, but there's one thing that makes all the difference. This one thing. I found this one food that people living to 100, 110, or 120 eat all the time, and that all the so-called experts are not eating, and they'll tell you it's bad. It's the devil. This is the bad food. Look at people like Robert Atkins. Robert Atkins in his 70s. Now, people say, oh, he slipped on ice, Matt. Yeah, he slipped on ice, but he had a heart attack. He had hardening the arteries. He was obese. Look it up. Yul Gibbons, young. Nathan Pritikin, young. All these people, they young because they're avoiding this one food. I think this one food is the key to my extending my life decades longer. If you want to do that, get my book. You can spend about $30 on Amazon to buy it, or you can get it from me and it's free. I'll send it to you. Just help me out with shipping if you can. So let me tell you some of what's in the book. Blood sugar. Blood sugar is super, super important. I discovered that these very, very old men have perfect blood sugar. Mine was high. So I started doing what they're doing. I adjusted a little bit, like a tweak in how I have breakfast now. And my blood sugar is like 80, 85, 90 when I wake up every day, which is really good. I put that on page 276. Then there's fitness and exercise. None of these men work out in a gym, but they're super fit. I wanted to be fit. So what I did is I looked at what they do to stay active, and I found like a 10-minute routine, an activity I do every day, and I'm really fit, and I don't have to worry about setting foot in the gym. That's on page 316. Prostate health is key to men. Without it, we're sunk. These men have no pee problems, and I was having those problems. So I looked at what they do and their diet and all these sort of things, and I came up with this, I'll just call it a tapping, 90-second tapping thing, keeping my prostate great, no more pee problems. Instead of getting up 3 times a night, I don't get up at all. My wife Jody gets to sleep, and we're much happier this way. Page 101. So let's take cholesterol. You know how a lot of guys worry so much about cholesterol? Well, these men virtually all have perfect cholesterol, and I think it's because their metabolic rate is high, and when your metabolic rate is high, you have good normal cholesterol. So I figured out a way to maintain my metabolic rate. My cholesterol numbers are outstanding. And the doctor said, you don't need to take anything. I don't know what you're doing. Just keep doing it. I put that on page 162. So let's talk about weight. None of these men are fat, but none of them are on a diet either. They're eating the one food, remember. And I did a little bit of tweaking with the one food, and I was able to lose 38 pounds. I went from about 225 to 188. And I show you exactly what I did. No counting calories, no skipping meals, nothing like that. Super, super easy. I put that on page 250. Blood pressure is another thing. Now, blood pressure is something we don't think about. These long-lived men all have great blood pressure. I found that living at high altitude in the mountains, in the hills, helps blood pressure. But I came up with a very simple way, since I'm living on the flatlands, to have good blood pressure. Mine's 120/80 now, using an oxygen method that simulates altitude. It's real easy. It's got my blood pressure great and helped lots of other people. And I put that on page 139. So you can buy my book, Health Through 120, on Amazon for $29.95, or let me send it to you without charge. I'll just ask you if you can to help me out with the shipping. That would be super, super. And then it's like, well, who is it that pays? Like, do they still split everything? And then this person writing, and I guess it's the girl, she says, my financial situation has been poor lately. I can't really eat out as much. I don't want to buy expensive food. So my boyfriend is like, okay, I'll go out and eat by myself then. So it's like a struggle, a big struggle between him. He's making money. She's not making money. They were splitting everything. Now she can't pay her, quote, share. So the situation is much, much worse in that respect. So what do you feel about this kind of relationship?
I hate the friend zone. So any relationship that starts with friendship, this is just another reason. So there's a couple things going on here. The first thing is that we've created this whole cultural thing around splitting the check. And I don't know that it comes from men's cheapness. I think it starts from a place of, it was like a feminism thing, and women were like, hey, I can pay my own way. Because I've been with women who are really offended when you offer to pay. And so it doesn't come 100% from men, and maybe it's also some men are doing cheapness. I think once you establish something, you have to go through a process of reset, and the longer you wait, the harder it is. So for him, he's like, well, we've been splitting the check for 7 years. Why are you bringing it up now, right? It's kind of solidified. I'm not sure it's recoverable, right, because you spent so long, but I think you have to have that. You just have to say it. I also think she's probably never said to him, say, listen, you make a lot more money than me. I can't afford to go out. You just have to decide if you want to go out with me. And also, like, it is this thing. There are certain types of people, when they have more money, they still nitpick all the time. Like she's saying, like, oh, sometimes he'll make me Venmo him $2.50. Like, that's really, to me, a big red flag. Like, that's something that, like, I don't think she should be in this relationship. I think this is kind of a systemic problem where the thought of me saying to my wife, let's go out for dinner, she goes, oh, I can't afford it. And I go, okay, I'll go by myself. That's an insane thing to say, for me to say. Like, I think it shows there's something bad in the relationship. And we let these things go and I know there's been a lot of comments lately about money stuff, right? He makes more money, she makes more money. What do we do? And money is like the most common thing people fight about, the most common reason people get divorced other than infidelity. So it's a big deal. And people don't like to talk about it. I think the first thing she would say, listen, you have to decide how this relationship's going to work. You want me to pay half of everything, but we don't make the same amount of money, which means that if we go to places that I can't afford, then you want to split the bill and I can't do it. And it puts me in a bad situation. That's a tough situation. I think you just have to talk about it directly. I don't think there's a shortcut around it. I don't think you slowly build up to go, listen, this is a situation. Hey, if this is who you are, if you really want someone who's on the same path as you and yada, yada. And I honestly, if you're the kind of person who would rather I stay at home because I can't afford it and you go out and do something out me instead of going somewhere cheaper. Like, let's say you're going to go to a place that costs $20 a person. Then you can just go together with me somewhere place that costs 10 a person. It costs you the same. You're just going to a cheaper place, right? So he's making some active decisions there. I would say, okay, then we're not the right fit. And and I would either have the conversation that I would eject from the relationship for her. So I don't always lean on the guy's side. I think in this situation, the guy's in the wrong. I think she's made some mistakes by not saying anything until now, but it's a very normal thing to be like, oh, you get so used to it, you don't bring it up early on. And it may not be intentional on his part. And maybe the guy is like, we've just always split stuff. What do you mean? Right? Because he doesn't think about it. Because sometimes that happens with me and my wife. She'll bring something up that I haven't thought about actively. And then
No. I don't think it is that way. It's not that innocent because he's willing to go out and have a whole meal and leave her at home. To me, this relationship is doomed. I hate to say it that way. But if you're a real couple, you're not going to let your other half, stay home while you go out and enjoy a meal. That's ridiculous. I just don't see a way to reconcile that, actually.
Okay.
I can't see a way. Even when I have gone out with friends, just friends, and I was making a lot of money and they weren't making money, sometimes I would pay their way so I could have their company, and I knew they didn't have money, and it was okay. But I mean, this idea of, oh, I'll just go out and have a whole meal, honey, while you stay home, to me is beyond the pale. So I can't see this as, it's a good test that he failed and she should move on.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to give him a little bit of maybe he's completely unaware, but I mean, yeah, you're right. Going out it's so shocking to me to be like, oh, I'll just go sit by myself in a restaurant facing a wall. Like, it's so, you're right. Like, bring it up, I guess, but otherwise, yeah, I jump ship. You're right. So it's just to me, it's such a strange thing to say. I've got one. Speaking on this point, I've got one that I thought was really amazing that came in. Let's see if I can find it because I'm so surprised. Which is like, okay, am I crazy for being mad that my boyfriend brought home 2 kids without asking me? This is how she phrased it. And here's what happens. She's dating a guy. They're like 19, 20, whatever. He has an older brother who's late 20s or 30, married with 2 kids. She's very good friends with the older brother. They spend a lot of time with him. The older brother and his wife die in a car accident. So the parents are too old. The grandparents are too old to take care of the kids. Okay, they're feeble. They're at that age, like 70s, 80s, where they could not take on 2 children, like they're 3 and 5. And he brings the kids home and goes, look, I'm their dad now. Like, my brother asked me to do this. And she gets mad because he didn't ask her. And she's like, I don't want to have kids. You need to get them a guardian that wants kids.
Yeah, I remember there's an internet guru guy, so-called, and he said, like, if you're a guy and you're with a woman and she has a kid, that's not your kid. You're not its father. Just screw that. You just have to stay away from that situation. You can never be raising someone else's child. That's terrible as a man. That's ridiculous. A man doesn't do that. And I felt like this guy is a moron. In this day and age, there are many men that grew up without a father, and somebody in their life assumed the role of a father in some way and helped them become a man. And I think that's a very admirable thing. And I'm glad that some men step up to the plate and they don't all feel like this idiot influencer that you should never help raise someone else's child. That's terrible to me because, children are innocent and they didn't do anything and they deserve all the help they can get. And if you're in a position of being able to help bring up another child that otherwise would not have anybody, that's good for you. You're a wonderful person to do that. However, if you don't want to do that, that's perfectly fine too, because this young man didn't make the choice of raising her child. It wasn't his choice. And so he's perfectly fine to say, I don't want to do that. It's not really what I want to do. And the worst thing you could imagine would be if a man agrees to raise a child and he's not really interested in it, and so he's resentful and angry. Don't you think that's how a lot of step situations develop so badly? Because one or both, usually the man, they don't want to be there, they don't want to be raising this kid, and they're upset because the kid is competing for the attention of the girl, of the woman, and they feel resentful about that and jealous, and that's a very bad place. So I admire this man because he said, no, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. I'm not interested in that. At least he's not pretending to be interested or doing something that he would resent later.
What?
So, and I don't blame her for, I think she should have asked and discussed this before she, quote, brought a child home, bringing these two, and I think it's two kids, not just one. I mean.
You have it backwards.
Yeah.
Wait, it's the
I had
girlfriend.
we had good family friends.
It's the girlfriend who's mad that her brother, who was left the two kids in the will, whose parents died, brought his brother's two kids home. There's no one else to take care of the kids. She's like, make them wards of the state. That's her advice. You have it flipped in this case. And it's like,
Oh, that's terrible.
okay, I was like, it's one thing if like she already has a kid and you go in knowing it, but like the parents die in a car accident. To me, it's like, you can't, it's such an extreme thing to say, because not only did she get mad, she goes, I don't want to raise kids. This messes up my whole future. It's not like he didn't do anything, right? Your brother leaves you the kids in the will. Your parents are too sick to take care of them. That's a very extreme situation, and it's like this guy's stepping up in a major way, and that's a tough thing for the guy, right? And she's like, comes in and says, find someone else. That's like a guy who comes in, right? Like the internet guru comes in and goes, well, I'm not raising that kid. You got to go put it up in an orphanage, and then I'll date you. That's how extreme her statement is. Like, that's really intense, right? And I don't like what she said at all.
No, I don't either. Sometimes there's things that happen when you're young. Like she's very young and she says, I don't want to be saddled with this at this age, But sometimes things happen in life where you're just handed something and you just have to take it. It's not always what you really want, but you have to do it anyway. And I would say this is one of those cases. I think that sometimes life hands you children or grandchildren or anything that could happen. And, she should just do it. I mean, change your life and it'll work out really, really well, actually. It's not always the way you think it's going to be. And she probably had some ideas about
here's what's
her path,
crazy.
her journey, and now it's going to be different. But so what?
The guy is crazy rich. Okay, so she lives in an apartment with her boyfriend that he paid for flat out. His parents gave him the money to buy an apartment at 18. So she doesn't even have to pay rent or anything. The biggest issue you think with kids is, it's a financial burden. They don't even have that. There's enough money that she never has to work. She doesn't have to worry about taking care of the kids financially. That's covered. So it's not even that part where she goes, how are we going to make ends meet? It's like, of course, obviously, and she's like, it's me or the kids. So of course the guy would choose his brother's two kids. Like, that's a major thing. Like, when I think about something happened to me, or something happened to my sisters and so they wanted me to take care of their kids, I would do that. Like, it's part of, being a family. So yeah, I felt like that was a pretty rough one. And it was shocking that she thought she was in the right to come at someone that hard. How dare you bring these two orphans into my home? It's not when I first read the subject, I thought he went to an orphanage and grabbed two kids. Right. It wasn't, but this is my brother, it's in the will. What are you supposed to do? That's a huge responsibility. Well,
the thing is, she may be unfit to raise children and have them in her life at all. So maybe they're just better off without her. I mean, that's the feeling that I get. It's the same. Really, I told the story, according to different circumstances, so I may have gotten that wrong, but it's the same thing that applies. If the woman is unbalanced and unable to have the type of responsibilities that a mother needs to have, then she can't be a mother, even though she might, everyone might want her to be. So there's that too. We see that all the time with these girls that would have children and they're so young. I remember in high school, there were girls that had a baby and they were 16. And they were just, I think, very, very difficult mothers and not good. Just because they didn't know who they were yet, and they had this kid and they hadn't finished their education. They didn't have any stability in their lives in any way. So on the other hand, we have some people that we know, and they have children as a culture. The girl will have a child at 18 or 19, and she has family and friends that are, women that'll help raise the child, and she'll be working, and it's fine. Like, in a way, it's a badge of honor to have a child at 18 or 19, and having a husband or a boyfriend is a plus, but not necessary. So that's a different culture. But it's kind of the opposite of this one, because in that case, the girls know they're going to have a kid, and they're okay with that when they're 18 or 19. In this case, she's not okay with it at all.
Okay, I've got another one. This one's interesting to me. Men are delusional when they say they're going to peak in their 30s and 40s. Everyone I know in her 20s is dating a guy within 3 years of her own age. There's no such thing about men peaking later or being desirable later. Men peak at the same age as women, and they're absolutely crazy. There are women who date older, but it seems like their motivations are about money. These women always have younger guys on the side that they like more. Why do these dumb men believe that they're more valuable or their value goes up as they get older?
So you can tell that a woman wrote this, right? It definitely is a woman's point of view on the situation, and it's wishful thinking, especially these days, because we're in a time where there's a lot of difficulties in the world. There's a lot of pessimism and adversity, and it's getting to be tougher with high inflation and people just more and more pressed. And so with that, the men who are getting the women tend to be the older men and the younger women, because the fact is, I don't know about peaking, but the men have acquired resources, money, maturity, and they're older. And so it's actually a natural thing, really, for younger women to be attracted by older men.
I used to think that meeting girls was so hard. I would lay awake thinking, how am I going to get through life alone without someone to share it with? I feel like I'm missing out and running out of time. And now, suddenly, everything's changed. I'm watching this video saying there's one scent women really go crazy over.
When a guy smells good, it makes me want to snuggle up closer to him.
If I smelled this on him, I would jump on him for sure.
I couldn't keep my hands off of him the whole night.
And now that I'm using this one scent, I'm talking to women more. Women sometimes are approaching me. I'm going out more.
So I was just walking past this guy and OMG, I smelled the best thing ever.
Is on the top of the list, and this is killer.
This guy smells good. I don't even know what he looks like, but he smells good, and that gives me a reason to want to talk to him.
I'm at the supermarket trying to decide which cereal I want, and this cute blonde starts talking to me. We exchange numbers, and I get that a lot. I'm not doing anything differently. I'm still dressing the same, driving the same car, telling the same dumb jokes. Imagine someone like me dating 3 different girls. Can you believe it? And it's all because of this one scent that women go crazy for.
And it's normal. And younger men really have a tough time competing because they don't have money, career, resources. And a woman who's maybe in her 20s, she finds a guy who's in his 40s or 50s quite appealing because he has all those things. So I disagree completely with her. It's obviously wrong, and it's from a woman that has a point of view that's somewhat resentful of this. And I don't think that it is true that all women are cheating on their older boyfriends or husbands. I don't think that's true at all. And it could be true. I mean, certainly women do cheat. I have known women who are in their 20s who are married to men in their 40s and 50s who did cheat, but I don't think that that's the majority or that necessarily is representative of all of them. So I think it's normal, natural, and this reminds me of women's resentment of the trophy wife syndrome, how men will often get divorced later when they've acquired a lot of resources and they'll marry a much younger woman, and everybody says, oh, it's a trophy wife, and they're resentful. For example, our former president did this. But you can understand it. Why would a guy want a woman his age if he's dating and of course he'd want a younger woman. Why wouldn't he?
Yeah, I think that usually when people jump into this argument, it's they're trying to stop someone else. It's not about them. It's like when older women are like, like, why would a man my age date a younger woman? It's so gross. They don't know anything, right? It's about themselves. So what she's really saying is that these guys don't want to commit to her because they know they have a longer commitment window. They're like, oh, I can get married. I got married in my mid-30s. I didn't have to get married to someone I was dating at 22, 24. My wife was significantly younger than me, right? So that has worked out for us very well. So she's clearly in my opinion, what she's expressing is guys my age feel like they don't have to commit, which means they don't have to step up to my standards. And she's feeling the ticking of the clock, which is fair, which is like, yeah, so maybe she doesn't want to date an older guy, but she can't get stability. Guys in their 20s very rarely want to get married these days, and with how much intimacy they can get, right? How frequently and quickly women in their 20s will do the devil's tango with a guy they're not dating, or a one-night stand, or they just met, or friends with benefits, or situationships. Less and less guys are feeling any pull, right? The reason men used to get married was because, it's the only way to get intimacy. Now you can get it without the marriage. So for men, the benefit calculation has shifted. So I think that's what she's really saying is like, these guys need to step up because I want someone to marry me. And they need to stop thinking that they can find someone to marry when they're older, because if they do, that one will just cheat on them. That's what I think I'm hearing here, is that it's like a bit of sour grapes. And it's interesting because when I was like a freshman in high school, right, I was so tired of seniors dating freshman girls. That's not fair, right? Some girls go to prom 4 times. And it's the same thing that happens. Then you're a senior high school, and then what do? You go and date a freshman, right? Because then those girls are now dating guys in college. And then you get to college, and it's the same thing. So it's the way it's always been. Women have always dated men older. And it's interesting because women will always say this. Women are always like, listen, men mature slower than women. Well, if that's true, then that means a guy has to be older than the woman to be at the same maturity level.
They do.
So if that's, you can't have it both ways. You have to choose. So I get
always is true. Always been true.
I think it's a silly thing to say because people are going to like what they like, and older men and younger women are always going to be more common than older women and younger men. But you just have to sometimes accept it's the nature of the beast.
The fact is that sexually, I don't think men are peaking in their 20s either. Women have a definite biological clock. Men do not. So it's kind of fine for a man. He can be 40, 50, 60, 70. Even there's men that have fathered children who are 100. So it's definitely not the big hurry to have children that women feel. And that is the other reason for marriage. Besides having nookie, men would marry because they want to have children and they wanted to have a stable family life. But they can certainly do that at any age, whereas women have this constraint. One thing I'm seeing more of now, Jonathan, are women in their 30s who are realizing that they put their career first and they figured that they would then start a family, and now they're in their 30s and they're kind of panicking because the men aren't around anymore that want them. They've already gotten married, and then the older guys don't want them either because they want a woman in their 20s, not in their 30s. So there's a lot of women that are sort of feeling that they're out in the cold now because they put other priorities first. And now when they do want to raise a family or get married, have children, that option doesn't seem to be open to them. And there's only a few more years available to them. Do you know how many women are like that in this situation today?
A lot. Yeah, I think that a lot of women got sold a bill of goods that was like, oh, you'll be just as happy with a career as you would with a family that loves you. You're just as happy with a plant that you see when you come home from work after a long day's work. And yeah, as you get older, you start to realize that, oh, everyone tricked me. They sold me a bill of goods. I partied through my 20s, and now it's not what I want. And it's hard to shift. It's hard to shift from career to marriage and kids in your 30s. It brings in a lot more complications. But yeah, I think that it's unfortunate. And then what happens is all these women then, the only way they can get their revenge is to tell other women in their 20s, no, this is great. You should do the same thing I did. Don't worry about it. And then that's kind of how it passes on, like a social contagion where people, well, misery loves company. So I'll just tell other people. It's kind of like when you see a divorce happens. Like a woman leaves her husband, and then all of her friends, she convinces her friends to do the same thing, and now you've got like 4 women that are like, oh, we're not, we're not like lonely. We're not old women. We're cougars. Younger men in their 20s love to date women in their late 30s and early 40s, right? They convince themselves they're happy and they go out to nightclubs again because now they can afford to buy their own drinks because they have to because they're older. And it's exactly, one woman does it, realizes it was a horrible mistake, but she convinces her friends to join her. And I've seen that happen too.
Yeah, and the fact is that older men, they want women that are in their 20s generally, not women in their 30s, simply because women in their 30s may be in a great hurry to have children and kind of rush things along because they're panicking about their biological clock running out. And a lot of times older men already have raised a family. They're not interested in a second family. Or maybe not, it's complicated. And basically you have a lot of women now in their 30s, and what they're doing is they go out with other women and just hang out in packs of women because there's no guys that are going out with them, and they have no boyfriends, no dates. It's very sad. I see that a lot. So anyway, if you're an older guy, you definitely you're in a great position today if you want younger women. That's a fact. There's a lot of that around. So I have one more question that I want to ask. Let's see how I can put this here. Okay. So this is another one by a woman. We got a lot of questions from women today. But she says that we've been together for a long time, at least 10 years. My weight has fluctuated a bit, right now. Maybe I'm a little bit heavy, not too much. She basically describes that she was about, I'll just convert this, I would say about 100, 125 pounds. She's 5'2" when they met, so she was a little bit overweight. Then she's lost a bit of weight. Okay, here's the point. Her boyfriend thinks that she's fat, basically. He said, well, I'll still love you even if you're fat. And she says, I'm not fat. So it's like a perception of someone who thinks that they're not fat, and the boyfriend thinks they're fat. And she said her boyfriend has been sad and is blaming the girl. He says, I'm not attracted to you because you're kind of fat, which I think is really too bad. I'll tell you my thought about this. Let me hear yours, and then I will tell you mine.
Yeah, so she's jumped in weight. The thing about it is that the first thing is that at lower weights, smaller numbers are more significant. Like if I gain or lose 2 kilos, no one's going to be able to tell. But at 50 kilograms, that's a 4% change in body weight. That's a huge difference. 4% is significant. So that's the first thing is like, okay, but I think that, she says that she had 2 different eating disorders. She had anorexia and bulimia until she was about 20. So when he met her, she was 42 kilograms, right? So when he met her, she was rail thin. And so when I met my wife, she was 40 kilograms. Now my wife is 52. So this is, I don't know if my wife posted this. Other than the ages, it's almost something exactly she could say. And it is this thing where it's not about the weight. It's about where it shows and how you carry it. And again, it can be like, yeah, if there's an issue with them in the intimacy department, the attraction, like I understand what's happening, and it is something you have to work through and figure it out because people's weight goes up and down. And it sounds like she is going to the gym, she is putting an effort. It's not like she's not. It's confusing that he's also like, you're not allowed to get too strong, right? So it's like he's created a couple of like limitations. Like I want you to be skinny, but you're not allowed to be too muscular, and muscle helps you lose the weight. So I don't know everything that's going on here. My feeling is that
I spent 25 years researching why some men live to 110 or 120. Everyone thinks it's genetic. They think these people have special genes to live to 110 or 120, but I found that's not true. I found that all these men who are 100, 110, or 120, all of them are eating this one food. Grigoris Tas. He's drinking wine, he's having fun with friends, he walks 2 hilly miles a day in his native Greece. He's eating this one food. He's 110. Stanislaw Kowalski, he starts jogging at the age of 104. He's eating this one food now. He's 110. He's running marathons. Arturo Licata from Italy, he loves pasta with ricotta cheese. He has a wonderful life. He eats this one food. He's going to be turning 112. Swami Svivananda, he sleeps on a board on a mat. He takes trains by himself. He is proven that he's 125, and he's eating this one food. Haj Musa from Turkey, he celebrates life every day. His wife's 110. They love each other so much. He and she eat this one food. He's said to be 130 years old. So why aren't we all eating this one food if it's so great? It's because the so-called experts tell us to avoid this one food. Remember Yul Gibbons, the guy that was on TV all those years ago? He was made famous by the cereal ads, right? Gibbons avoided this one food, and he passed at an age of 64. Nathan Pritikin, he was one of the greatest food gurus of all time. He avoided this one food, lived to age 69. And then there's Dr. Robert Atkins. He was the author of the all-time best-selling diet book. Passes, sadly, at the age of 72. So, who would you rather copy? Men like 110-year-old Grigoris Tahas, 125-year-old Swami Sivananda, 130-year-old Haji Musa, or these men who expired young despite their being the supposed experts? My name's Matt Cook. I'm an Amazon best-selling author, and recently I was interviewed by ABC News. When I discovered this one food, and all these men that I was studying, living to 100, 110, 120, I spent years figuring it all out, researching things, traveling around the world, and discovering what it was about this one superfood that keeps men so healthy and living such a long life. I found along the way that these men do things completely differently than anyone else. So I'm eating this one food now. I'm following everything they say, and I am hoping that I live to 120, and I think that I will. So I have these notes, these discoveries, years and years and years of research. I'm talking to my wife, Jody. She says, why don't you put that into a book and share your notes? So I spent a long time putting them all into a book I call Healthy to 120. I had a small number of copies printed out, and I'm going to mail one to your house.
Go ahead, click on the link to claim your free copy.
All you have to do is just help me out with shipping. That's it. Let me just tell you the discoveries that I've made and how I've adapted this one food in a lot of different areas of health. Listen closely. Blood sugar. Blood sugar is super, super important. I discovered that these very, very old men have perfect blood sugar. Mine was high. So I started doing what they're doing. I adjusted a little bit, like a tweak in how I have breakfast now. And my blood sugar is like 80, 85, 90 when I wake up every day, which is really good. I put that on page 276. Then there's fitness and exercise. None of these men work out in a gym, but they're super fit. I wanted to be fit. So what I did is I looked at what they do to stay active, and I found like a 10-minute routine, an activity I do every day, and I'm really fit, and I don't have to worry about setting foot in the gym. That's on page 316. Prostate health is key to men. Without it, we're sunk. These men have no pee problems, and I was having those problems. So I looked at what they do and their diet and all these sort of things, and I came up with this, I'll just call it a tapping, 90-second tapping thing. Keeping my prostate great. No more pee problems. Instead of getting up 3 times a night, I don't get up at all. My wife Jody gets to sleep, and we're much happier this way. Page 101. So let's take cholesterol. You know how a lot of guys worry so much about cholesterol? Well, these men virtually all have perfect cholesterol, and I think it's because their metabolic rate is high, and when your metabolic rate is high, you have good, normal cholesterol. So I figured out a way to maintain my metabolic rate. My cholesterol numbers are outstanding. My doctor said, you don't need to take anything. I don't know what you're doing, just keep doing it. I put that on page 162. So let's talk about weight. None of these men are fat, but none of them are on a diet either. They're eating the one food, remember. And I did a little bit of tweaking with the one food, and I was able to lose 38 pounds. I went from about 225 to 188. And I show you exactly what I did. No counting calories, no skipping meals, nothing like that. Super, super easy. I put that on page 250. Blood pressure is another thing. Now, blood pressure is something we don't think about. These long-lived men all have great blood pressure. I found that living at high altitude in the mountains, in the hills, helps blood pressure. But I came up with a very simple way, since I'm living on the flatlands, to have good blood pressure. Mine's 120/80 now, using an oxygen method that simulates altitude. It's real easy. It's got my blood pressure great and helped lots of other people. And I put that on page 139. So you can buy my book, Healthy 120, on Amazon for $29.95, or let me send it to you without charge. I'll just ask you if you can to help me out with the shipping. That would be super, super. Go ahead, click on the link, claim your copy right now. I have a limited number printed. Thank you so much for listening, for staying with me. God bless you and your family. I hope He is shining His light and His love on you. And as I like to tell everyone I meet, I'll see you at 120.
This is so weight can be in a relationship can be sinister, as in it's one of those things where it's the guy slowly gets more annoyed over time, and it gets to the point where like every time you're eating a piece of cake or whatever, or even eating something normal, right, he starts to go, why does she eat? And I think it can grow like a whispering voice. So at least they're talking about it and getting it out in the air. I think that this is something you solve between the two of you. It's also like they've never been in a relationship. They've been together for 12 years. They're both 28, so they've been together since they were 16. So he was with her for 4 years of eating disorders. So compared to that weight, right, 10 kilos, that's a huge 40% weight gain since the early days, or 20%, whatever. That is a huge difference, but I don't know all this other stuff. So my overall feeling is that these two have never been in a relationship with anyone else, so there's a lot of that issue. They got together at 16, they're still together in their late 20s. You're going to have sinister stuff. I think that, my feeling is that like he's got a legitimate thing to say, which is, hey, I want to be more attracted to you. I think that probably there's some pornography stuff going on here. That's one of my guesses. I know we always go to that. And I think that she just has to make a decision. And I don't know the right answer because she's not fat. Let's get to the details. 52 kilos is not fat, right? Probably he's talking about her losing 2 kilos, 3 kilos, 4 kilos. Like my wife would look significantly different if she lost 3 to 4 kilos. Significant. So I know that at this weight it can make a huge difference. But you have to figure out what your priorities are and stuff. And, you guys have to have a conversation. Like maybe go to the gym together and solve it together. That's one choice. Or otherwise, like, man, I don't know. Maybe you guys need to have a relationship with someone who is not a child, right? You've only been together since you're high school. You've never really had a healthy relationship, or never had other relationships. You have nothing to compare it to. So I'm not sure. What do you think? I know you have probably a completely different opinion to me. Your opinion is she just needs to lose the weight. Like if you want to keep your man, lose the weight.
Yeah, I think porn is very involved. Well, I think she should lose the weight. I think that when you're in a relationship, you have to think about the effect of what you're doing on the other person. And if let's say you're talking about eating cake or eating things that are bad for you, you're harming the relationship because you're harming the other person. So I think you have an obligation in a relationship to take care of yourself. That's a fact. And if she's not taking care of herself, if that's the complaint, you're fat because you eat all these really bad foods, then, that's a problem she shouldn't do. But I do agree with you about porn. I think that if the sex is really healthy and it's a lot of oxytocin building activities, a little bit of weight doesn't make any difference whatsoever. None. The fact that he's so super critical indicates that he's in a kind of way down this sort of dopamine path, which people get when they're using porn, comparing the woman that's in front of them with women in these videos. And he's got to stop that. It's very, very poisonous. So she may be eating the wrong foods and too much, and he's probably consuming porn, which is bad for the relationship. And you really have to think about it in a relationship and doing things that are for the other person. There's just no question about that. So I hope that you've enjoyed this today. I hope you will go to this other video we have and hit like and subscribe. We can improve what the YouTube algorithm is doing for us, and you'll hit the bell icon so you'll get a notice when you're around and you've got nothing going on, and then we got a new video you can listen to. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Jonathan. We'll see you next week.